In the rugged valleys of southern Utah, a tragedy unfolded in 1857, a massacre that would come to be regarded as one of the darkest and most controversial chapters in American frontier history. This is the story of the Mountain Meadows Massacre. In September of 1857, a group of Arkansan migrants traveling westward towards California was attacked in what is now known as the Mountain Meadows Massacre. More than 100 men, women, and children were killed. The massacre was carried out by a combination of Mormon militiamen and Native American groups. The event was fueled by a mix of religious fanaticism, political tension, wartime fear, and deep mistrust. The Mountain Meadows Massacre was not only a horrific loss of life, it was a defining moment that exposed the extreme tensions in the American West during the mid-19th century. In this documentary, we'll explore what led to the massacre, what occurred during those terrifying September days, and how the tragedy reshaped political, religious, and cultural relationships within the United States. To understand the Mountain Meadows Massacre, we must first realize Mormonism's early history in the United States. Mormonism was founded in 1830 by Joseph Smith, and from the beginning, the new religious movement faced hostility and persecution. Many Protestant Americans viewed the faith with suspicion, particularly criticizing practices such as polygamy and the growing political power of Mormon communities. By the 1840s, this persecution grew violent, leading to the murder of Joseph Smith in Carthage, Illinois. Afterward, Brigham Young led the Mormon population westward, eventually settling in what is now the state of Utah. At the time, however, this region was the sovereign territory of Mexico. For the Mormons, this territory represented a refuge far from the United States, far from hostile neighbors, and far from those who sought to drive them out. But stability did not last long. As more settlers moved into the region, tensions grew between the Mormon population and the U.S. government. The Utah War began in 1857 when President James Buchanan sent federal troops to the area, fearing the Mormons were rebelling against U.S. authority. Mormons, believing another persecution was closing in, prepared for possible conflict. This atmosphere of fear and suspicion created an unstable, highly charged environment. Local leaders instructed settlers to stockpile resources and limit interactions with outsiders. Anti-government rhetoric increased, and many believed that war with the U.S. Army was imminent. In this climate, a wagon train of around 120 Arkansan migrants, families seeking a fresh start in California, made their way through Utah. They camped near various Mormon settlements as they traveled. Although many accounts differ, some reports suggest that tensions rose between the migrants and the local population. To the Mormons, who were already on high alert, the arrival of an unfamiliar group of armed migrants at such a volatile moment created additional anxiety. Some local leaders feared the migrants could support the approaching U.S. forces. Mistrust continued to grow, and by early September, the atmosphere in southern Utah had reached a breaking point. The Mountain Meadows Massacre began in mid-September of 1857. The Arkansas wagon train had reached Mountain Meadows, a quiet, grassy valley where they planned to rest. On September 7th, they were suddenly attacked. Gunfire erupted from hidden positions in the surrounding hills. The Arkansas immigrants formed a defensive circle using their wagons as protection. They endured 5 days of siege. Several people were killed in these attacks, but the migrants held out. Realizing the initial plan had failed, Mormon militia leaders made a decision that would determine the fate of the entire wagon train. They approached the immigrants carrying a white flag, pretending to offer safe passage. Desperate and out of supplies, the immigrants agreed. One by one, the surviving men, women, and children were separated into groups and escorted away from the campsite. Then, at a signal, the militia turned on them. More than 100 people were killed in a coordinated attack. Only a small number of young children, considered too young to be witnesses, were spared. The Mountain Meadows Massacre remains one of the most shocking frontier tragedies in American history. The scale of the violence, the deception used, and the vulnerability of the victims made the massacre stand out even during a violent period of westward expansion. News of the massacre spread slowly at first, but when the truth emerged, the reactions were immediate and intense. Settlers in the nearby regions were horrified. Newspapers across the country demanded answers. Politicians criticized Mormon leaders, and the incident deepened an already growing national distrust towards the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Survivors, particularly the young children who were spared, were eventually returned to family members in Arkansas. Their presence and their stories fueled public outrage. Meanwhile, Mormon leaders faced pressure from both the U.S. government and the nation at large. Short term, the massacre dramatically increased tensions between Mormons and federal authorities. Investigations began almost immediately, and suspicion fell on both local leaders and larger church authorities. The long-term effects of the Mountain Meadows Massacre echoed for decades. The event damaged the public reputation of the Mormon faith and intensified their isolation from mainstream American society. Government officials used the massacre as evidence that stronger control over the Utah Territory was necessary, and it fueled distrust that shaped policy decisions for years. Families of the victims spent decades seeking justice. Their efforts continued long after the Civil War and well into the late 19th century. Eventually, after years of investigation, only one man, John D. Lee, was convicted and executed for his role in the massacre. Many others never faced trial. The tragedy also became part of the historical memory of the American West, often used to illustrate the dangers of extremism, fear, and unchecked power. All in all, the Mountain Meadows Massacre stands out as one of the most significant and haunting events in American frontier history. It exposed the profound tensions between religious communities, the federal government, and the dangerous consequences of fear and isolation. The massacre led to both immediate and long-lasting consequences, deepening the anti-Mormon sentiment across the United States, shaping political decisions about the Utah Territory, and forcing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to confront a painful part of its past. Today, the Mountain Meadows Massacre serves as a reminder of how fear, mistrust, and misunderstanding can escalate into tragedy. It remains a powerful example of the need for transparency, accountability, and compassion in times of conflict.